Hello, stitching friends. I hope you're having a happy day. I have had the most wonderful time the past 2 Saturdays. I taught my Huswif, Sampler Stories Huswif, to Kindred Spirits Sampler Guild um, on Saturday, the 18th of February. And then yesterday, I introduced Ann Wilson, my Quaker Medallion Sampler reproduction, to the Western Reserve Sampler Guild. And you know what? One of my students in the class the week before had already finished hers. And it was just beautiful. And this piece incorporates, oh my goodness, lots and lots of wonderful stitches. And I have the two antique samplers that I used for most of the motifs behind me. And what I recommend when I'm teaching it now, I wish I had thought of it at first, is inside to put some little pattern or design of your choosing in. And during the class, we show where to mark your paper mock-up so that you can do that. And hers was just lovely. You can certainly individualize it. And where mine is one fully lined envelope, she had decided to sew down the inner nun stitches on hers, so she had a three-pocket design. But it was lovely to see that she had already finished hers. I just enjoy it so much when I see that people are finishing their projects. So thank you very much. Well, I want to introduce, I have things just stacked everywhere. I want to introduce Ann Wilson and her 1801 Quaker Medallion Sampler. Here is the booklet. And in the booklet, I have included, let me come over here, a needle book, because Quaker samplers usually don't have much other than cross stitch over 2 and over 1 and possibly tent stitch. So I included a needle book, a self-lined needle book that I made using 2 of Ann's motifs. And mine is still in progress, of course. People have asked me what linen I would recommend to stitch the sampler on, and there's just a wide variety of possibilities. When I decided to stitch this needle book, I used Needle and Flax Dirty Teacup. It's just slightly modeled and looks a lot like the sampler, but there are several wonderful linens, and I know Jean Lee is featuring the sampler as her March Sampler of the Month at the Attic, and she's been busy deciding on linens in various sizes that she thinks would be good, and also ordering supplies. Several other shops have ordered Ann Wilson. Let's see, Hobby House, Sassy Jack, Shakespeare's Peddler, Victorian Rose, Tomorrow's Heirlooms. So the booklet will be available in lots of different shops as well as on my website. One thing I wanted to mention with this, when I'm doing nun stitch on my self-lined pieces, I really like to use 103, a Versoix 103, in a color that matches the linen. And that way the nun stitches basically disappear. And of course, we'll join this. Let's see, Charlie's under the table. Sorry, Charlie, I'll set it right there. When we join this, oh, here it is. So when you stitch it, it will look like this. And you'll put nun stitch all around, and I put it through the middle just to define the lines. Then you'll fold it up, and you'll join the nun stitches across the top edge, and you'll join the nun stitches down each side, and then you'll fold it You'll have a fully lined needle book, and you can insert your needle pages, or I was just thinking it might be fun to insert an extra page and put a scissor keeper on it. So you'd have your needle book and scissor keeper, but it will be fully lined with designs in the middle as well as on the front and back. And of course, I've inserted several alphabets, so that you can put your own name and dates on it. Okay, so let me show you the sampler. See if I can pick it up. Here is the antique. It has many of my favorite motifs on it. Sorry about the glare. I just don't have a non-glary spot in my house, I don't think. But I like this spot because I can put samplers behind me in the china cabinet. So, would you like to know a little bit about Ann Wilson? Hope so, because here it comes. The research is fascinating, and the only way I was able to find Ann Wilson was because she tucked her parents' initials in this motif and the date up here. So that gave me a huge hint of where I could find Anne. And I also studied a variety of Quaker samplers. And one thing I found just fascinating in Carol Humphrey's Quaker schoolgirl samplers on Ackworth, she had written something. Let's see if I can find where I put it. I don't see it. But this, okay, I thought I just had it. Here we go. This coronet, you see the friendship motif in the middle? See the little crown on the top? Well, Carol Humphrey has written on, I think it's about page 200 of this wonderful book. Hang on a second. I've got a stack of them over here. Okay, this book, wonderful, wonderful book on Quaker schoolgirl samplers from Ackworth. She has written that it's not proven, but that particular little coronet, the tiny crown on top of this, isn't usually found on Ackworth samplers, but it is found on samplers from Milverton Quaker School. So she thinks that this may have been specific to that one school, but she has not proven that at the time she wrote the book. She said that it was unproven but worth mentioning. So I found that fascinating, because as you look at different Quaker samplers, you'll often see that same wreath, but most of the time it doesn't have a crown. So I thought that was just fascinating. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Anne, but I wanted to show you, I was thinking the other day, I was out to dinner with my daughter and granddaughters, and I thought, I'm just a flippity-gibbet. They asked me what I was working on. They're so kind. And I get distracted. I will be working on reproducing a sampler, and at the same time I'm thinking, oh gosh, wouldn't this make wonderful smalls? I actually bought several antique pocketbooks when I was teaching in Arizona for Jean Lee last year from Mary Cox. And I cannot stop thinking of designs that I really want to use to recreate new pocketbooks using those basic patterns. But for this particular project, I want to work up a new teaching piece. And in this book, which is a wonderful book on Westtown School Samplers. Threads of Useful Learning by Mary O. Brooks. And as I was flipping through looking at the samplers and learning about the history, I found a beautiful needle case. And I thought, oh my gosh, wouldn't it be fun to make a needle case? So I started sketching it out, and I want to make it self-lined, but I can't figure out how to make the flap self-lined. So it'll be basically this, which is pretty big. And then it'll be a self-lined piece, one that you fold up and put together yourself. And then inside the pocketbook in the book, or sewing case or whatever it was, it had several gussets and dividers and that kind of thing. But for mine, I'm going to make it so it has a fold-up divider inside. So it will be one big piece, and it'll be sewn up so it has dividers inside rather than pockets. And I think that I'll make an attached scissor keeper in there also. And as I looked through the book, there was a wonderful little shoe pin cushion. And I thought, you know what, I have a shoe like that. And I searched among my antique sewing accessories, and look what I found. Look, I found this wonderful little shoe. And there's a shaker one just like this from one of the girls at Westtown School made. So this one has bullion knots for buttons. Bullion knots are not my friend, so mine might not have bullion knots for the buttons, but look how they sewed right through the card. So this is lined with silk, but it has covered card on each side. And then this particular one has a sweet little ribbon you could hang it from, and they have inset a tiny pin cushion. I definitely will not be sewing through layers of card, but I'm just excited. I've lifted motifs from Anne's sampler, and I've already charted some for this. And I'm excited about that. And it'll be joined, and I might make it into, rather than having a pin cushion inside, I might just have it like a pin wheel. And I was thinking, well, you can't really have shoes without purses. So I picked up this little antique in my collection that I do love. So if that's a pinwheel, we could use a little needle book. Isn't that sweet? And it opens like this. Now, this one also has sewn through the card around the edges. So I'll have to figure that out. I won't be sewing through the card, and that this top, little top V, the flap, it doesn't lift up. It's just purely decorative, but isn't that sweet? So wouldn't that be fun to have a Quaker sewing case as a teaching piece with those accessories? And I saw in, let's see, in this book, I was looking through this book on purses just for fun, and I found, you know I love Queen Stitch. Well, I found an American Quaker made purse. It was made circa 1800 to 1810, which is, you know, the time that Anne made the sampler. And it was in Bucks County, you know, right near Philadelphia and Buckingham, where Anne grew up. But look at it, it's a solid Queen Stitch pocketbook. Can you see that? I have the book, so I can't see what I'm showing. There, let me come closer. So it's completely Queen Stitch, and it has a strawberry design. And I thought, I don't know what exactly I can do with that, but I want to do something with it because it is a Quaker product. and this is A Passion for Purses by Paula Higgins and Lori Blazer. It's an interesting book if you like antique purses, which I do for sure. Okay, so that's my flibbity gibbet. So right now I'm finishing up my needle book, and then I'll start to work on the sewing case. But let me tell you a little bit about Anne. Here are the threads that I chose for Anne in a Vera Soie and in the 103. And there's one Gloriana. Let's see. There are only 9 colors. Oops, I put my finishing thread in there. So these are the colors of the threads used in the sampler. And on the back page, I've included 3 legends. The legend in a Vera Soie, and in DMC, and in a Vera Soie 103. Someone asked me why the colors were so different, and I think what happened was my charting system ranks colors by number, and so the DMC numbers are, of course, different than the Vera Soie, Soie d'Alger, and 103, but the symbols are consistent. So they may have been thinking that because the symbols didn't line up, you know, color-wise, they were different. But of course, DMC doesn't have the range that Soie d'Alger does. So I got as close as I could, but it wouldn't be exact. And then I didn't have the full range of 103, so Jean Lee and Nicola Partman put their heads together and helped me find the right colors to go with the Soie d'Alger. So that is on the back. And I'll tell you a little bit about Anne. When I was doing the research, I was just fascinated by so many, many things about her life. She was 5th generation Quaker in America. Let's see, her family came from England. George Fox brought over many of his followers, and they settled in the Delaware Valley in the late 1600s. And then moved to Burlington, New Jersey, and in New Jersey became the Philadelphia yearly meeting. Anne's family and her husband's family were among the George Fox followers, and I didn't have to use up a whole bunch of pages for stitch graphs, so what I did instead was I have given several pages of history for the Society of Friends or Quakers, and I have compared, I used my Falwell School sampler to compare the culture that was going on in the Philadelphia area while Anne was stitching her sampler and Westtown School had been established. There were so many other things going on in Philadelphia culturally. Whereas the Quaker folks at first, you know, were the main ones, many other religions and interests and cultures arrived, and that was why the Philadelphia annual meeting decided that it was so important for their children to go to a Quaker school. And let's see. I don't want to read you the whole thing because I've put several stories of history in here, several pages of her history and interesting things in the area. But her father, Oliver Wilson, was most likely on the board that decided to build the committee that formed Westtown School. And the first students arrived in the Westtown boarding school in May of 1799. They started with 20 boys and 20 girls, and the idea was over the next several months the student population would go to about 200, and they did accomplish this by the end of 1799. The female students ranged from 8 to 20 years, and Anne was 20 when she made this, so I thought, okay, you know, maybe she was a teacher there. And the boys normally did not enroll after the age of 18. And the idea was that the housing was organized in the Friends manner of plain living. Students were to spend a full year, though, although many stayed less than 12 months and some stayed longer. And according to what I have found, particularly with Anne and Joseph Eli's nephews, they came intermittently. They might be there when they were 8, and then again at 11, and again at 13. So it was very interesting the way that it was organized. The tuition was $64 a year to be paid quarterly, and funds were available for children whose families couldn't afford the tuition. Now, Ackworth School was primarily focused on children who needed help with their education, not necessarily, children that were not affluent, whereas Westtown took in students of all backgrounds. So more than 3,800 students were admitted to Westtown School between May 1799 and April 1843, when sewing was part of the curriculum for girls. Now, this is so interesting to me. Boys and girls learned reading, grammar, penmanship, spelling, arithmetic, advanced mathematics, geography, astronomy, and bookkeeping. And in addition, the girls learned sewing and the boys learned surveying. So the Quaker folks were very early into female education. Gosh, I have written so much in here. Let's see. It's just fascinating. I have put a picture of the Buckingham Meeting House in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, that Anne and her family lived in Buckingham and attended this church. And her first husband, Joseph, his family had lived on Buckingham Plantation since the 1700s. So here's a picture of the Buckingham Meeting House. And then after they were married, they belonged to the Mulberry Street Meeting House, which was renamed Arch Street Meeting House in Philadelphia. And there's a picture of that. So I've included a lot of history, and then stories about Anne and her husband Joseph, and where they lived and how he was employed, what they did for the local community, and oh my goodness, just their wills was a vast education, especially Anne. Joseph Eli was a very successful merchant in Philadelphia, and it just amazed me. Their wills were so impressive. You know, you get lost when you're doing research, and census records and wills and newspapers and all kinds of things. You can really spend hours and hours and hours in research. I don't want to tell you everything, but I will tell you, in 1850, when the census took place, Anne Wilson Eli Jinks, she had remarried after her husband's death, were living in Anne's 3-story brick home in the North Ward of Philadelphia, and with them lived Anne Eli Bach, who was one of Anne's nieces. She was 12 years old and was a student. Sarah Ann Fassett was a 43-year-old free black woman, and Mary Clappel, a 22-year-old woman who was born in Germany, also shared their home. So as you look through the census records, you can see that these women had lived with them for a long time, and even at the time of Anne's death. Her will is so impressive. There are 52 people listed as beneficiaries. But it's really more, because the way that Anne set things up, and her husband had done the same in his will, their children of the beneficiaries are also included, because the dwelling, stocks, trust, investments would transfer to the children when their parents passed away, and provided for Anne Eli Bach, who was 16 at Anne's death, and Sarah Ann Fassett, who was 47, still lived with her, and another young woman, Emma Jane Young. She left many thousands of dollars to female and male cousins, children of cousins, cousin-in-laws, and esteemed friends. And one example was she gave her friend Thomas Williamson $1,000 and her secretary, bookcase, and the books thereon. She organized how the investments were to be handled, and was very specific with the bequest left to married women and unmarried girls. I found this fascinating. For each female named, each time, she directed that the various types of bequests, whatever they were to be paid into her own hands and upon her receipts for her sole and separate use, and not liable for debts, contracts, engagements of a husband or a future husband, nor subject to power and control of current or future husbands. That was very insightful. She made a provision, as her husband had done, her first husband, for Westtown Boarding School through the yearly Philadelphia Meeting Committee, which oversaw the school operations. She left funds for the Association for the Care of Colored Orphans of Philadelphia, and for an institution for the insane, where her step-son-in-law was a physician, for local schools in Philadelphia, and many other charitable organizations. And as her first husband had done in his will, she left funds to pay the inheritance taxes on every single thing that she had left. I won't tell you all of her story. I hope that you will get the booklet and enjoy it. And then I have included signatures of Anne's two husbands and herself, because I found the writing just fascinating. And of course, then we have, all of the large charts, and the booklet also has, flip to the back side, the needle book with complete instructions, including the nun stitch, joining the nun stitch, and alphabets and that kind of thing. So I filled orders all afternoon yesterday when I finished talking with the Western Reserve Sampler Guild. They had asked me about this, so I still have booklets for my Susan Scott 1734 sampler and my Autumn Sampler Compendium. And I was showing this to them, and I used two of Anne's sampler motifs for the inner pocket, which is lined, and this is another self-lined piece. And this would make a really good class. It's a public piece, but it has, I think, 14 different stitches in it. So it's a wonderful opportunity to do a little bit of everything. And I was sewing away on this. I made this beautiful double running wreath, and I think I must have been cross-eyed. It was probably after midnight, and I was looking at the squares. Well, I had been doing something charted over one. And so instead of counting up 24 to start, I counted up 12. And I didn't realize it until I had the whole wreath done. And I thought, no, 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 no. That double running acorn wreath was not the simplest thing I've ever done. And I certainly did not want to take it out and start over. So I had put two of my favorite songs in here. Come Ye Thankful People Come, and Over the River and Through the Woods. My grandchildren call me Mimi. So I centered it up and put, To Mimi's House We Go. And that way I didn't have to start over with my wreath. And so I have charted it the proper way. But then in case you might make a mistake too, I also put To Mimi's House We Go with a full alphabet and so on. So you could personalize it too if you wanted to. And this is how it looks when it's stitched. And then of course you fold it up according to directions and stitch it together. So I've got lots of stitch charts in this one. And again, oh, here it is. So I did the To Mimi's House We Go and included a couple of alphabets so that you could personalize yours. So let's see, what else did I want to say? Oh, did you happen to see something I posted the other day? I wanted to chart this wonderful sampler, move some things over, that has a Christmas verse in it. I have a friend who's willing to stitch a model for me. I need to get busy and chart that. But this is the sampler, and I decided to unframe it so I could see what the back looked like. So this is the front. And there are 4 verses in this one. And the middle one is on Christmas. As the nativity of Christ our Lord, at the nativity of Christ our Lord, the angels did rejoice with one accord. Let Christians imitate them here on earth and keep that feast with joy and civil mirth. So I thought, wouldn't this be fun to have available by Christmas? Let's see. So there's the front, and here is the back. So you can see she used some peachy rust colors that don't show up at all on the front, and some blues, let's see, that didn't show up at all on the front. Like this blue butterfly on the front, it's totally washed out. So I was able to match the colors to the back, and I have ordered all of those colors. But the fascinating thing to me was there had been a piece of paper, actually the sampler was basted to the paper like this. And when I carefully clipped the sampler off of the paper, look, I have a shadow sampler. Isn't that awesome? I have had a little shadow sampler before, but nothing like this. I may send this to see what I can do with it. I just thought that was fabulous. You just never know what you will find when you unframe a sampler. And I admit, I rarely unframe them. Many of my samplers are well taken care of, and I wouldn't want to take them apart for anything. Some of them have been conserved beautifully and professionally, and I would definitely leave them alone. But every now and then, when I'm charting one, I really want to see the back side, so I do. But that was quite a revelation to me. So, what else? Oh, if you're looking for another book that has Quaker samplers in it, this one, it's Delaware Discoveries, Girlhood Embroidery, 1750 to 1850 by Gloria Seaman Allen and Cynthia Shank Steinhoff. It has several Quaker samplers throughout, and that makes perfect sense since George Fox's group originally settled in the Delaware Valley. So, let's see. I have these available on my website in booklet form and in PDF. And because some people love either smalls or samplers, but not both, I did the PDF as a sampler by itself and as the little needle book by itself. And several shops, as I said, do have, or if they don't, they should any minute have their copies. One last thing on my to-do list is my Queen Spot Motif Sampler. And heck, I didn't bring it out. I hung it back up yesterday. Well, I'll show you anyway. So I matched up some beautiful linen. It is the Tabby Cat Bow Truckle. Look how pretty this is. It is a great match for the antique Queen Stitch sampler. And the colors are amazing. I think it took over 20 colors. I have 3 of each because I'm planning to do a pocketbook with that. But for my Queen Stitch Spot Motif sampler made in 1779 in the Netherlands. I got these little boxes, but they aren't very easy to open. The colors are just luscious. These are some of them. Let's see if I try to hold them all up at the same time, I'll be sure to dump them out. There you go. Let's see. All these pretty colors will be in that Queen Stitch sampler. So, I guess that's pretty much everything. Christina McClellan is coming right along model-wise, and she will be ready the end of probably in September. So I think that's everything. I've got plans. I better get busy and finish that needle book and start on that Quaker sewing case. I hope you're having a wonderful, wonderful time. Oh my gosh, I live in North Carolina, in the middle, just 30 miles below Virginia. And it has been so beautiful here. I am telling you, the cherry trees, tulip trees, the Bradford pears, the crab apples, they're all in bloom. The forsythia and star magnolia bushes are. My chocolate vines are about to burst open and everything has beautiful new growth on it. We had no snow all winter and no ice storms, thank goodness, and I hope we won't now because everything is blooming and ready for spring, and so am I. So, thank you for letting me be with you. Let me know if you have any questions. My website is www.gentlepursuitdesigns.com if you would like to order anything. And I know the shops are probably busy getting ready with threads and linens for your Ann Wilson Quaker medallion sampler orders, and they have these booklets. So I hope you'll let them know what you want. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.